The Kandarian Dagger, part weapon, part nightmare fuel, and 100% creepy, is the ultimate Deadite weapon in Sam Raimi's Evil Dead franchise. This peculiar blade, created from bone and adorned with creepy runes, is definitely something you wouldn't find in your average kitchen knife set. Yet it stands as the unlikely choice of weapon in Ash Willaim's fight against undead demonic spirits. Sure, the chainsaw gets all the glory and blood splatter, but don't underestimate the dagger. It's been doing its deadly work in silence, cutting through evil since day one. So what dark corner of the universe did this ominous blade crawl out of? And what makes it so powerful against Deadites? While the Kandarian Dagger may not be the loudest or most flashy in the room, its backstory is just as dark and twisty as the creatures it vanquishes. In this marvelous video, let's explore the terrifying history of this weapon that has been neglected for far too long, and give it its due. But please, don't touch it with your bare hands. Seriously, we don't want to invite trouble. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Forged in darkness, the story behind the Kandarian Dagger. The Kandarian Dagger, known as the Demonic Dagger or the Champion's Bane, is an ancient weapon crafted from a blade made from a mysterious dark metal. This dagger, famous for taking down Deadites, is shrouded with eerie dark energy, unearthed by Professor Raimi while rummaging through the ruins of Castle Kandar. It has journeyed through many hands and has always played a role in the struggle against evil. Its tale hops across various alternate realities, but only one timeline suggests its genuine beginnings. In that version, the dagger was created around 3000 BC by the devoted followers of the high priest Urigan. The weapon, initially called the Blade of Ereshkigal, to pay tribute to the Sumerian goddess of death, later took on the name Kandarian Dagger, named after the ancient Mesopotamian city of Kandar, where it was forged. The journey of the dagger from its creation to rediscovery in 1982 remains a secret. It later found a place for itself in the castle of Kandar in England, just next to the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, also known as the Book of the Dead. For centuries, the dagger and the book lay untouched and hidden. Well, that's exactly how it should have been. But we humans need to meddle with everything. In the late 20th century, when Professor Raimi discovered the artifacts, everything changed. Curiosity got the better of him, and he packed the dagger and the Necronomicon and headed to his cabin in the woods of the United States. The carved human bone handle of that blade possessed unsettling, otherworldly qualities, he wrote in his journal. Even more terrifying was the fact that its blade was sharp enough to cut through the Necronomicon's skin-like binding. A week after Nobi disappeared, following the unintentional awakening of the Kandarian demon, Ash Willaim discovered the dagger in the cabin's fruit cellar in the first installment of the Evil Dead series. From that moment forward, the Kandarian Dagger turned out to be an important weapon throughout the franchise. Unlike ordinary weapons that just take off limbs, this dagger goes for the jugular and inflicts genuine, lasting damage on the Deadites. You can call it the MVP against supernatural terrors. A blade through time, the Kandarian Dagger across the Evil Dead franchise. Where it all began, The Evil Dead 1981. The 1981 cult classic The Evil Dead, directed by Sam Raimi, is more than simply a horror film set in a cabin in the woods. Amidst the chaos brought by the Deadites and their unrelenting torment as the main attraction, the Kandarian Dagger plays an important role, as Ash Willaim and his friends set off to a secluded cabin for a weekend retreat in the hopes of escaping their mundane lives. The story begins. What they discover is far from calming. In the depths of the cellar, they uncover the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, an ancient Sumerian text bound in human flesh and inscribed in blood, and the Kandarian Dagger. Things go horribly wrong when the group unwittingly summons demonic forces by reciting passages from the Necronomicon. The Deadites, undead demonic spirits that take over humans and turn them into hideous, vicious monsters, unleash their attack. Initially, Ash and his friends try to defend themselves using anything at their disposal, axes, guns, and various weapons. But the Deadites prove to be almost unbeatable when it comes to the usual tools. At that point, all hope lies on the Kandarian Dagger. While the dagger is intriguing to look at, it's not merely decorative. It's designed to combat supernatural beings. Blood, gore, and the Deadites writhing in pain, the dagger could do anything. Its power to harm and kill Deadites makes it the ultimate weapon against the dark power unleashed by the Necronomicon. The Kandarian Dagger proves to be quite handy in the movie. The scene where Shelley is transformed into a Deadite by the demonic energies released by the Necronomicon Ex Mortis is particularly memorable. She turns hideous, with pale skin, ghostly white eyes, and a haunting voice that gives you the willies. With Shelley now completely possessed, she brutally attacks Ash and his friends. In an attempt to stop her, Scotty, Shelley's boyfriend, jumps into action. However, normal weapons turn out to be ineffective against Shelley's powers and brutality. That's when the Kandarian Dagger comes out to play. Scotty plunges it into her, and upon striking Shelley, her body aggressively reacts. It writhes and contorts in a horrific manner, revealing the dagger's supernatural properties. It's obvious that powers beyond our understanding were intended to be fought with this weapon. Yet the dagger isn't a complete answer. No, it isn't going to solve all the problems for Ash and his friends. Even with the injury, Shelly comes back to life and carries on with her assault. Scotty had to resort to using an axe to fully dismember his girl. While the dagger can inflict damage and weaken the Deadites, they can only be killed by dismemberment or specific rituals. This highlights how resilient the Deadites are. It also forces us to face the sad reality of how sometimes it's our loved one on the receiving end. But there's nothing much you can do, except behead or dismember them. Ash and his friends face a dark realization, one that shapes the struggle that lies before them. Linda, Ash's girlfriend, goes from being a kind person to a Deadite, her maniacal laughter leaving Ash and others at their wits' end. Ash plunges the dagger into Linda, yet just like Shelly, the blade fails to do the trick. Ash, unable to bring himself to dismember her, chooses to bury her instead. However, Linda emerges from the dead, and Ash has to ultimately decapitate her with a shovel. In a tale where survival seems nearly unattainable, the dagger reminds us that even the most sinister entities have their weaknesses. Even though the dagger may not be the perfect weapon, it proves to be an essential ally in the fight for survival, standing alongside Ash himself. And with the franchise's expansion, the dagger lays the groundwork for more horrors to come. Bloodier, Bolder, Deadlier, Evil Dead 2, 1987. The Kandarian Dagger makes its comeback in 1987's Evil Dead 2, giving Sam Raimi a delightful do-over to unleash his original version of the Evil Dead. Because who doesn't love a good sequel that's just as bonkers as the first time? This time, Ash Willaim returns to the cabin in the woods with his fiancée, Linda, on a romantic retreat. Just like the sequel, things go south pretty soon, when they unintentionally awaken demonic powers by playing a recording of the Necronomicon Ex Mortis. Like the previous installment, the dagger is discovered next to the Necronomicon, so when Linda gets possessed, we know what's coming for her. Ash is left with no choice but to decapitate her with a shovel, only for the severed head to bite his hand. A scene that is both terrifying and strangely funny. Ash, in a frantic attempt to save himself from getting possessed, severs his own hand with the chainsaw, because why not? Who needs two hands anyway? However, the hand, now possessed, breaks free, teasing Ash and making things even more confusing for everyone. The situation becomes more chaotic when Annie, the archaeologist's daughter who studied the Necronomicon, arrives at the cabin accompanied by her own crew. When Annie's friend Jake gives in to his terror, the dagger plays a gory role. Believing it might put an end to the insanity, he makes Annie walk outdoors and gather the lost pages of the Necronomicon. But just as the Deadites draw near, Annie, while trying to close the door to protect them from the Deadites, accidentally stabs Jake in the back with the Kandarian Dagger, believing him to be the possessed Ash. The wound is fatal, and everything gets even worse when Henrietta, the Deadite-possessed monster in the cellar, drags Jake in and eats him. However, that's not all. Chaos reigns supreme at the film's conclusion. Henrietta, who was once Annie's mother but is now a grotesque supernatural monster, confronts Ash. He rips her to shreds with his trademark chainsaw hand and his trusty shotgun before landing the killing blow. Because two weapons are always better than one against the Deadite, isn't that right? By the end, the only ones left standing are Ash and Annie, who are doing their best to drive away the demonic spirits. Annie manages to recite passages from the Necronomicon, but before she can finish, Ash's severed possessed hand stabs her in the back. When it comes to what worked in the first Evil Dead 2 kicks it up a notch. Even after all this time, the Kandarian Dagger is still important to the plot, both as a lethal yet flawed weapon against the Deadites, and as a means of furthering its link to the Necronomicon. While it doesn't guarantee survival, it most certainly adds to the franchise's twisted mythology and reminds us that nothing is ever easy in the world of Evil Dead, and everything is soaked in blood, guts, and dark humor. Time Travel and Terror, Army of Darkness 1992. Army of Darkness confidently presents itself as a sequel to Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. Yet the connection between the two is, well, shaky at best. The story revolves around a cursed Book of the Dead from the previous film, which takes Ash Willaim, our hero, with a chainsaw right into the Middle Ages. The plot continues exactly where Evil Dead 2 ended, with a few changes made to the prologue. Bruce Campbell is back as Ash, with the same chiseled, square-jawed confidence of a real-life superhero we've seen in the previous films. Remember how Ash lost his hand in the last movie? Well, he did a few tweaks and added a chainsaw attachment, turning it into the perfect weapon for slashing zombies, while the other hand is very capable of firing a shotgun with an infinite supply of ammunition. And no, we won't be entertaining any questions about how he loads it. After his last battle with the Deadites, Ash, now a discount supermarket employee in the real world, unexpectedly finds himself transported to 1300 AD, chainsaw, boomstick, and Oldsmobile in hand, directly onto a medieval battlefield. The locals, with their hopeful eyes, see him as the prophesized hero, the chosen one, meant to vanquish the Deadites wreaking havoc across the land. and you already know where it's gonna lead. Yes, the Necronomicon. Now, all Ash had to do was retrieve the cursed book and use it to kill the Deadites, and then use the book to go back to his own time. However, Ash manages to mess up the spell needed to safely get the book back, because, well, Ash. His blunder sets free a horde of undead skeletons, commanded by none other than the wicked doppelganger, Evil Ash. With his 20th century resourcefulness and snarky bravado, Ash must save the day, or evil will take over the world for good. Dedicated fans of the franchise may observe a change in focus here. Despite its crucial importance in previous installments, the Kandarian Dagger is given less attention in the Army of Darkness. Basically, the Necronomicon's mayhem, along with Ash's shotgun, chainsaw, and unwavering resolve, overshadows the dagger. In this 1300s do-it-yourself battle, heads spin, body parts fly, and blood gushes sky high as Ash takes on the skeleton soldiers. With his Chemistry 101 textbook in hand, he concocts some gunpowder and sends it soaring right into the midst of the undead army. While the absence of the Kandarian Dagger is felt, that doesn't prevent the film from delivering a full-on riot through Deadite-infested history, proving not every story needs a weapon to shine. It's Ash's snark, chainsaw, and shotgun all the way. A Modern Crusade, Ash vs. Evil Dead 2015 to 2018. When the Evil Dead franchise came back strong with Ash vs. Evil Dead, it wasn't just to please fans. Instead, it went all out, expanding the universe with blood and guts. Set decades after Ash Willaim and his chainsaw shenanigans, this series reintroduces him to a contemporary audience, while further exploring his story. 30 years have passed since Ash's fight with the Deadites in that famous cabin. Embracing a peaceful life and trying his best to stay out of sight, you can find Ash now living in a trailer in the middle of America, working at a value stop store. Burdened by trauma and regret, though he would never openly acknowledge it, Ash was a man shaped by the marks of his past. For decades, Ash has kept his head down in the hopes of escaping the horrors brought on by the Necronomicon. But because by now we all know Ash is just Ash, he manages to mess up his perfectly chill life. In a drunken state, he unintentionally recites parts of the Necronomicon, unleashing the very evil he's been avoiding for all these years. In an instant, he finds himself right back into a nightmare he believed he had escaped. With no escape in sight, Ash gears up to confront the Deadites, this time determined to finally put an end to the chaos. This time, Ash has allies in his battle. He's got support from Pablo, a co-worker who firmly believes in Ash, and Kelly, a passionate, straightforward ally with her own score to settle with the Deadites. From gritty bars to historic ruins, their battle leads them to locations that are more terrifying and ridiculous than ever before. Meanwhile, Ruby Nobi walks the fine line between an ally and a foe. Initially, she appears to be a fellow warrior in the fight against the Deadites. However, her actual goals become clear as the series progresses. Ruby is revealed as a demon in human form, and the actual creator of the cursed book Necronomicon Ex Mortis. She has her sights set on it, and wants to use its power to transform the world according to her vision, full of dominance and darkness. The Kandarian Dagger plays an integral part of Ruby's grand scheme. She manipulates events and summons demons by using its link to the Necronomicon's evil energy, even cutting Ash's connection to the cursed book. The dagger grants Ruby the ability to carry out horrific rituals, such as creating her demonic children from her own blood. Well, in short, Ruby knows how to keep it interesting. Ash vs. Evil Dead revives the original formula of extreme violence, dark humor, and unending mayhem that fans enjoyed in the first two films. In addition to continuing Ash's story, it also explores further into the Evil Dead universe, adding new layers to already legendary items like the Kandarian Dagger and the very friendly Necronomicon. Also, when it comes to getting rid of evil demons coming your way, you know you can always count on Ash Willaim, even 30 years later. Resurrected Horrors, Evil Dead Rise 2023. Instead of the franchise's usual rustic cabin in the woods, Evil Dead Rise has a modern A-frame home set in a green meadow, something you would call straight out of Midsummer's picturesque countryside. The film begins with this peaceful scene, but it abruptly turned into mayhem as the hideous Necronomicon appears in its grotesque, flesh-bound form. However, the meadows gave way to a more claustrophobic horror when the camera cuts to the grimy, crowded mayhem of a Los Angeles high-rise. While remaining faithful to its gory, bloody legacy, the film breaks away from the known, introducing a new era for the Evil Dead franchise. But trust me, they didn't cut corners on gore and terror. All remain the same, obviously. Beth, a guitar technician taking a break from her touring life, visits her sister Ellie and her 3 children, Danny, Bridget, and Cassie, who live in a worn-down apartment. On a stormy night, an earthquake rattles the building, unearthing a concealed vault in the parking garage. In it, Danny discovers vintage vinyl records and a book unmistakably bound in human skin, the Book of the Dead. And he did exactly what he shouldn't have done. He played on the records. Oh, Danny boy. He unknowingly summons the Deadite and thus begins a long and terrifying fight for survival. Tragically, Ellie is the first one to become a Deadite. Evil Dead's love for drama didn't fade, you see. Her body contorts and twists just like the victims from previous installments, a macabre display of physical horror. The once loving mother transforms into a vicious predator after the lives of her children, and Beth, a reluctant hero, embraces her role as the Beth. Initially hesitant, embraces as she battles to save her youngest niece, Cassie. The apartment setting heightens the fear factor since the family finds themselves cornered on a rooftop, cut off from the outside world. With creative murders and moments of excruciating fear, every scene adds to the suspense. The climax's intensity is through the roof when Ben and Cassie must defeat a hideous creature, a nightmarish fusion of the Deadite-possessed bodies of Ellie and her children. The final battle is a relentless bloodbath. Well, that's all I can say. Despite breaking new ground, Evil Dead Rise never strays too far from the franchise's blood-soaked legacy. The revelation of the Necronomicon solidifies its significance in the mythology. The eerie chants are replaced with the unsettling crackling of vinyl records in this edition, adding a fresh perspective, but still unnerving. Rather than secluded cabins or vast forests, we find ourselves in an urban nightmare within a crumbling apartment building. Instead of a lone hero, we see a family battling for survival through unspeakable terrors. This installment, in contrast to the earlier films featuring Bruce Campbell's Ash, takes a different approach by not relying on humor. Ash was the quintessential horror hero of the 1980s, hapless, self-aware. That man could grin from ear to ear while effortlessly waving a chainsaw, and we all loved it. However, times have changed. Rather than being a lighthearted horror comedy, Evil Dead Rise is a brutal survival tale that trades humor for raw intensity. The missing Kandarian Dagger, a mainstay in previous installments, indicates the franchise's readiness to transform. While it lacks the sheer terror of its predecessors or captures the famous cult atmosphere, it's fine, because it forges its own way, presenting a new viewpoint that is at once contemporary while still firmly grounded in the franchise's gory history. This installment sure does make an impression. Evil Dead is alive and rising. Weapon of Nightmares. The Kandarian Dagger is hands down one of the most dangerous weapons ever created to fight pure evil. This blade doesn't just cut, it burns. Even the slightest touch to the skin of demons, Deadites, or even the dark ones causes them to sizzle and sear like a steak on a hot grill. But that's just scratching the surface of what this dagger can do. In the comic series Evil Dead 2 Beyond Dead by Dawn, the blade has the wild power to absorb the souls of humans and demons it kills. Not only that, it can suck up energies from demons it slays, literally charging itself with their essence. In fact, when the dagger gets juiced up, the skull design on its hilt lights up with glowing blue eyes. Oh, and it's not just a soul trap or demon killer. This thing can also act as a dark energy conduit. Case in point, the Evil Dead Hail to the King game on PlayStation 1, where it was used to open a portal through space and time. The dagger has even been seen bleeding from the mouth of the skull on its hilt and releasing steam. Though what that means is still a mystery. The Kandarian Dagger is one of the few things capable of damaging the Necronomicon. And with 3 books of the dead now floating around in the Evil Dead franchise, we can very well expect a potential apocalyptic event. Whatever horrors emerge from that chaos, the Kandarian Dagger could very well be the key to taking them down. Perhaps the dagger's most exciting ability is its power to manipulate space and time. This opens up all kinds of possibilities, like uniting the many heroes who have fought the Deadites throughout history. And let's be real, this is the perfect excuse to bring back Bruce Campbell's Ash Willaim. He's already a time-traveling Deadite-slaying legend, and the dagger could be the tool to pull him back into the action. The Kandarian Dagger's abilities don't stop at demons. It's also effective against vampires. In one instance, a doppelganger of Ash used it to stab Dracula himself in the throat. If that doesn't cement the blade's versatility, I mean, what does? Marvelous verdict. The Kandarian Dagger is far more than a mere knife. It has fought off Deadites, battled demons, and looks incredibly cool while doing it. I mean, it's gorgeous to look at in a gothic way, but at the end of the day, it's a cursed blade that plays a crucial role in preventing the Evil Dead universe from descending into Necronomicon-driven chaos. And let's be honest, without this bad boy, Ash and his team wouldn't stand a chance against the Deadites. And unlike certain weapons, it doesn't require any bragging. Yes, you, Chainsaw, I'm staring at you. The Kandarian Dagger delivers results and has saved more lives and probably taken a few more than most heroes. To sum it up, the Kandarian Dagger is a legend, and it has truly earned every bit of its gory glory. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.